So with that, we're going to move on to our final session, which will be on commercial capabilities to support lunar exploration. Sorry, full mouthful on me on that one. Our moderator for this one will be Regina Blue. She is deputy of our commercial lunar payload services at NASA Johnson. So with that, I'd like to say hello to Regina and say, take her away. He's got things.
Fantastic. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon? Yes? Okay. The light is really blinding. I mean, I'm getting it here, so I'm not trying to make funny faces. It's just that this light is really different from what it is out there. So I bring you greetings from Houston. I am really happy to be here, and I mean that literally because it is really warm where we live. As you heard, I am the deputy manager for what we call CLIPS because I work for NASA and we have to acronym everything. And so when you see or hear CLIPS, you may hear it across the panel. CLIPS, no I, for Commercial Lunar Payload Services. I won't get into a whole discourse about my background, but it is storied. It is very varied. I grew up in mission ops, and I did a whole lot of stuff. And so now I am working very happily and fondly with this initiative that NASA has put in place. And I know we have some students in the room. For those of you who are not familiar with why CLIPS, CLIPS was created to provide regular and affordable, those being the operative words, delivery of our NASA science payloads to the lunar surface. And at the ISAM panel yesterday, I believe you heard Debbie Toback make a statement about it being the government's responsibility, if you will, to provide the proper demand signals for certain innovations. And so to that end, to my right, you see industry is responding to that. And to my right, I have the panelists who are active vendors. We call them vendors and not companies in the CLIPS portfolio. And each of these gentlemen represent companies who are actively, three of the four of them have active task orders, and you're going to hear about all the exciting things that they are doing to get us, no kidding, to the moon. And so I'm going to introduce them by name and company and title, and then I'm going to let them give you a spiel about what they are involved in and the approaches that they have in place, along with the missions that they are working on. And then we're going to get into a very insightful discussion about how are we enabling the lunar economy for lunar exploration. So with that said, to my immediate right is Dr. Timothy Crain. Timothy is the Chief Technology Officer for Intuitive Machines. And Intuitive Machines is headquartered in Houston, Texas, right around the corner from the Johnson Space Center. So welcome, Tim. Next, I have Shea Ferring. Shea is this Vice President on the Vice President over the Spacecraft Division at Firefly Aerospace. And Firefly is headquarters in the Austin area, a little bit 250 miles west-ish of me as well. So welcome, Shea. Next to Shea, I have Mr. Dan Hendrickson. Dan is the Vice President of Business Development at Astrobotic. Astrobotic is in Pittsburgh. So thanks, Dan, for joining me. And last but certainly not least, I have Mr. Rob Kelso. Many of you probably know Rob. He has a history with the agency, but for now he is the program director for OrbitBeyond. And so welcome these gentlemen with me today. I want to give you guys a hand because you guys are doing it, and I'm very, very excited to be a part of this panel. With that said, I'm going to toss the mic to Tim. I think I limited them to a couple of slides so you all can thank me later. So they're gonna present a couple of slides and then we're gonna get into it.
Thanks, Regina. She called me Timothy twice. I thought I was in trouble, so I'm glad we reverted to Tim. Intuitive Machines, we are based in Houston, Texas. We have won actually 3 CLPS task orders. And over the next 2 years, we'll have 3 missions landing on the moon. First mission is IM-1, and it is a majority CLPS payloads. We have some other payloads in there, but CLPS really was the primary customer and the motivating force behind that mission. We made a big step forward when we won our second task order for IM-2, which is a South Pole landing. And it was exciting because the CLPS payload was only about 40% of our capacity and didn't cover cost. So we had to go out and find other programs and other payloads. So we realized the excitement and terror of having enough to fill part of your hold in your cargo ship, but not the whole thing. And so we're flying 2 payloads on that one outside of CLPS that are part of Jim Ryder's STMD tipping point program. One will demonstrate LTE 4G technology on the surface at the South Pole, and the other one is a hopper, which you can kind of see in the middle. It's the Micronova. It's our version of Ingenuity. Of course, there's no atmosphere on the moon, so we can't use a helicopter. We have to use propulsive technology. But we will fly off and hop into a permanently shadowed crater and demonstrate that we can go in, make measurements, and return as a initial platform that will later be there for either astronaut drone support or for geophysical prospecting, or if you really want to look out and get excited, maybe exploring lava tubes by flying down into them. IM-2 is big for us too because that's the first mission we're offering high energy ride shares. So we do not take the full capacity on the Falcon 9 that we use with our lander. And we have customers that are flying along on a TLI throw basically. And we're taking one of those spots with our Con-1 satellite, which will be a orbiting data relay satellite in position mid 2023. IM-3 then goes to Reiner Gamma in 2024, and that is the location of a magnetic swirl. I'm sure the scientists in the room all know what a magnetic swirl is. I did not until we won the task order, but we're going to actually fly in that one 5 payloads to 5 rovers. They're going to map that magnetic swirl and provide the scientists with the data to get insights on what caused that in the formation of the moon. So an exciting portfolio of missions already underway, and we're actually manifested our first payload for IM-4, but we're still working the details of that out so you don't quite see it in all the flashy press releases yet. I think I have control of the clicker, right? Great. I did mention Con-1. Con is one version of the name of the Egyptian god of travelers by moonlight. And so we have the constellation, as we lovingly call it, of 5 satellites that we intend to put up. The first 2 will be in frozen polar orbits, Con-1 and Con-2, and give us 24-hour coverage of the South Pole. Super excited about that. We've also commissioned Nova Control, which is our operations center. We have over 300 hours of training with a live sim. We have that rich operations background at Johnson Space Center, so our test conductors are malicious and sadistic, and they put us through all kinds of things that we have to deal with that we wouldn't want to. We're not astronauts, but they get us prepared nonetheless. And we're particularly proud of our global lunar telemetry and tracking network. You see that in the bottom corner there with the dots. We have a 6-station agreement with radio astronomy sites that now have our baseband units in for performing lunar distance communications, and we've commissioned 4 of those and communicated with LRO. We have a tracking test coming up next week, so we'll have a non-DSN commercial version of basically lunar distance tracking. We're super excited about that. And then we all talked before we got here and agreed we needed to show some hardware as well, so it's not just images. That is the IM-1 Nova C flight article, the external structure in test at Intuitive Machines in Houston. The landing gear aren't on there yet, but that's the last thing that goes on before we ship. So super excited to be doing it and to take shots on goal. And I would say it's important to note that while we are competitors for task orders, we're also very collegiate. And I wish everyone at this table the best of luck. And I'd actually amend that and say not the best of luck. Shea and I talked last night, the best of design. May we all have the best of design and not need luck.
Cool, thanks. Okay, hello everybody. So again, Shea Ferring with Firefly Aerospace. So two slides also. First slide here is just to highlight where we're at in terms of the program. So we've had a task order for a little under 18 months, and you can see on the right-hand side on the screen that that's our flight light qualification lander that's currently being just completed testing at Northrop Grumman at their large shaker table. So we are actively building hardware. We have a lot of the hardware in-house, but basically we won this task order. It was called 19D when we won it, and we had been scaling up our lander designs for over 2 years as we kept trying to compete with these guys, and they kept beating us to get to where we're at now. And it's one of the things I was thinking about coming in here is a lot of these companies were not well known in the industry just yet, but we will be very soon as we start landing on the moon. But one of the things that this program brings is this sense of urgency, because we're small businesses, and these programs kind of make or break the company. And when you have urgency and you have these cliffs of survivability, it really changes your ability to progress and advance very quickly and get things done. So hopefully you'll kind of see that in the discussion today of, it's great to look out 10, 20, 30 years of what all these technologies are, but without a sense of urgency, those timelines are possible, or maybe not possible. But when you have to get something done, it forces you to get things done effectively. So that's what I really love about this program and why I'm at Firefly. But so just real quick, so like I said, about 18 months onto this program, we've already received about 80% of our flight hardware. That's how fast we're moving. There's some hardware that we had to either reinvent or invent from the ground up. So some of that is still in work and qualification, and that's what we basically are spending the next year finalizing before the flight lander comes together. And then some of the general highlight specs of the Blue Ghost Lunar Lander platform. It's 150 kilogram compatible lander. That's total payload capacity to the lunar surface. So if you're putting payloads into the lunar orbit, for example, you can take quite a bit more than that. We have better than 30-meter landing accuracy and 10 megabits downlink. And then we're also looking at extended operations into the lunar night on this vehicle. The graphic right in up front is actually part of our most recent proposal, where we are delivering a communications relay to the to lunar orbit also, much like Tim had explained. We all know that to get to the moon is one thing, but it's really about the data that you get back. And so having communications relays are super important. And we're actually going to fly that demo in Q2 of next year on part of our Alpha launch vehicle. So we're going to start demonstrating that hardware in space as quickly as possible. And then this is more of kind of the ideal state vision of Firefly's spacecraft group. So it's not just about landers, it's not just about relays. Firefly is really building itself to be an end-to-end space services and transportation company. So many of you may know about our Alpha launch vehicle, which is going to fly its second flight in the next 2 months. That's going to be our main workhorse for getting stuff into low Earth orbit. We're also developing a medium launch vehicle called Beta. One of the design reference missions for Beta is actually to deliver the Blue Ghost Lunar Landers to TLI. So hopefully we'll be able to launch everybody's lander, not just ours. And then actually, support this whole lunar ecosystem as shown in the graph, from everything from landers to rovers to relays, and then take that tech and expand it to other interplanetary missions. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Hendrickson with Astrobotic, a lunar logistics company based just down the road in Pittsburgh. It's great to have such a strong space presence that's building in the Ohio and Pennsylvania region. We've been in business since 2007 and really focused on the moon for going on 15 years now. So we've been pretty committed for getting to the moon and operating and thriving on the moon for quite some time. Even you might recall 2008 timeframe, the Constellation program was winding down, and yet we still kept our eye focused on the moon because we really believe in it as a destination and as a springboard for all of our future ambitions across the solar system. And so to that end, we're developing a variety of products and services that you see on the left side of this slide that show our lander delivery services. Those are the top two products that you see on the left. Our Peregrine Lander is our smaller vehicle. It'll be actually flying later this year in Q4. I'll have a little more on that in just a minute. And then we have our Griffin Lander, which is a much larger capacity vehicle at 500 kilograms, really a workhorse vehicle that can do larger payloads. But we've also been focusing on the elements that you need to be successful once on the surface beyond just the lander deliveries. So for instance, we're focusing on wheeled mobility. We're developing a small mobile platform called Cube Rover, which is like the name sounds. It's similar to a CubeSat. It's meant to be very modular and provides the capability for payloads to be integrated easily, and we offload the need for folks to develop the mobility themselves and provide an easy on-ramp for them. We also provide a Polaris Rover, which is a larger vehicle at 90 kilograms of payload capacity. It's almost like a pickup truck for the moon, if you will. Fits well with the Griffin Lander. And then beyond just mobility, we're also focusing on lunar surface systems as well. So we're a phase 1 contractor on the vertical solar array technology, or VSAT program, under STMD. We really believe that solar offers a great out-of-the-box solution for operating near-term quickly on the moon. We think power is the constraining factor for really realizing all of our ambitions, and so we've been really focusing on that as of late. And then we're also developing wireless chargers. So we're thinking a lot about distribution of power across the surface, and we have a tipping point contract also under STMD to develop wireless chargers, which we think are a good technology for getting a lot of this power distributed to surface elements. On the right is our manifest. We have Peregrine Mission 1, which will be delivering 11 NASA CLPS payloads, as well as a variety of non-NASA payloads as well. We're carrying 6 countries in some form, whether company, government, university, or nonprofit. So we're very excited to be making progress toward that first mission. We'll have a slide in a moment with some of the hardware that we're cutting metal on. We also have our Moon Ranger program, which is a rover program, which is actually a CLPS payload on another CLPS flight. So speaking to the collegial element, we have an ecosystem that we're all working together toward to make the moon accessible for everyone. And Moon Ranger is going to be doing some neutron spectrometer readings, as well as do some autonomy testing. And then Griffin, which will be flying in 2024, be delivering the NASA Viper rover, a large golf cart-sized rover. Be doing the first ground truth water ice measurements on the lunar surface. The findings from that mission could be quite historic and could change our understanding of the economic retrievability of water ice. So a very exciting mission to be delivering, and we're very excited to be making progress on that one as well. And then hardware and progress. So the CLPS program, I think in general, as the tip of the spear for Artemis, but then also for the commercial sector, is really making a lot of great progress across all of these companies. And I think that's an important point to really drive home, is we are doing it. We are going. So to that point, up in the top left corner, you can see that's one of our payload teams that we work with. We've integrated all the payloads for Peregrine Mission 1. They're ready to go. They're mechanically mounted. We've been receiving flight hardware, which you see the solar panel on the top image there. We've been doing extensive testing. We have our structural test model, the Peregrine, you can see in the middle on the left. That vehicle, actually, that we went through that test campaign in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and came out with flying colors that will survive launch, the Vulcan Centaur launch profiles. And then we also have our Griffin structural test model on the bottom left. It's gone through its acoustics and vibration testing, also passed. That was a really exciting day to see that structure come together. It's hard to get a sense of scale. Probably should have had one where you have a human being next to it, but that vehicle will be the largest lander since the Apollo LEM, and it's massive. It's going to be flying on the Falcon Heavy, so to just give you a sense of scale. I've been doing a lot of testing in our Mission Control Center, which you can see an image of there, and we also, late last year, opened our new Lunar Logistics headquarters in Pittsburgh, about a 50,000 square foot facility, clean rooms, Mission Control Center, labs, office space, and hosting about 180 employees at the company now, and continuing to grow. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see the Peregrine flight vehicle being unveiled back in April. We're continuing integration as we speak right now at the facility. And then in the bottom right, this actually is an image from here at Glenn Research Center. We did the egress testing right here with the Viper prototype with our structural test model from Griffin. So put that lander at a variety of extreme angles, 30 degrees. It's pretty exciting to see a huge lander at such an incline, and it successfully deployed the Viper prototype off of those ramps. So again, very exciting to be making progress on all of these missions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Before I'll let Rob talk, I want to amplify Dan and Timothy, and Shea all have, as I said, they have active task orders. Can you all hear me okay? Active task orders, which hence you see the toys, right? They are off and running. They are really, I tell you, this is our second panel, I think, in as many months, and every time I talk with them, I am awed. And so with that said, Rob is on our panel today representing OrbitBeyond. As I said, OrbitBeyond is a member of our portfolio, i.e. they are a viable company that has met the NASA requirements to submit and to proposals to us for task orders. They don't have an active task order right now, but that's okay because you're getting the opportunity fresh off the press to hear from an incubator company, to hear about what they're doing and what they're thinking. And so you won't see slides from them because well, you won't see slides from them. They don't have an active task order, but I wanted to set the stage and have you understand why not. So go ahead.
Thanks, Regina. What a joy it is to be back up here at NASA Glenn. A number of years ago, I was the lead flight director for the launch of Glenn's ACT satellite, the Advanced Communication Technology satellite that launched on a large transfer orbit stage from the shuttle. And ACT, the ACT satellite was the first all-digital communication satellite ever to fly in space. And what a great testimony it is for the type of work that the centers like Glenn should be doing. OrbitBeyond has its roots dating back to the Google Lunar X Prize days. Over the last 2 years, we have completed a series of design reviews such that now we have a spacecraft design that closes around reliability, closes around performance, and closes around mass. But these are extremely risky missions. These are not CubeSats. These are not geostationary birds. These are relatively complex, both in systems as well as in flight operations. So within cost and schedule and technical, they are significantly risky. So to help us manage that risk, our philosophy within OrbitBeyond has been to leverage, to the extent possible, flight legacy or flight heritage systems. So whether it's propulsion or comm or software, we look to infuse technology readiness level 8 or specifically 9 that has already flown in space. The only system that is not at a 9 level, and is true for every one of us up here, is in descent and landing guidance and navigation for optical navigation or terrain relative navigation. That's at best a TRL-6 because nobody's done it at the moon. Maybe the Chinese, but that technology's never been demonstrated in lunar powered descent. So that's the only area that we do not have at a 9 level. And descent and landing is probably the top risk apart from launch. When I went back and looked at the soft landing attempts for the moon, the first attempt in early 1959 on Luna 1 failed. The second attempt to soft land was successful with Luna 2, 13 September 1959. Since that time, the ratio of soft landings on the moon is at 37 to 38%. It's really hard. That translates to roughly 1 out of 3. And as a benchmark to that, you'll remember in 2019, there were 3 attempts, one by China, one by Israel, one by India, and only one, the Chinese, were successful out of that. So it is really hard. But we believe that as a company, we are ready now with NASA, in partnership with NASA, to move into that build and launch phase, and we're excited for an opportunity to do that. Thanks for letting me come and share with you this morning.
Thank you, Bob. That was a great setup and segue into the next question. I'm going to let us get into this discussion, right? So for the last 45 years, as you alluded to, we have spent time building shuttles and the International Space Station. So my question to the panel, and I'd like each of you to take a minute to address this question, and that is, are we covering all of the key technology necessary for lunar growth? I'll let you go first, Timothy. I'm going to call you Timothy all day.
Let's start now. The fact of the matter is, we have a rich technological base to pull from. And so the variability is not in the performance and the capability, it's really in the space demonstration of those technologies. And so I think what all the companies up here have done is we have assembled our unique mix of these are the things we can purchase, sometimes limited by readiness. That's been a big factor, especially with supply chain disruptions and with the pandemic. So what we can purchase, what we're good at internally, and all the companies have their own strengths. And then we're packaging that in a way that we all feel is going to minimize risk. But it's the technology is there to make these attempts. I think in the long run, we're all going to take different pieces of that and refactor them into, well, actually this one I would like to find a vendor or supplier once I have a little bit more time. Or our vendor supplier maybe isn't doing exactly what we need, and we're going to make a systematic improvement on our subsequent missions. So I think we are in a good position today to manage the risk, to take the attempts, but what we fly initially will, if we keep flying, we do that regular cadence of missions, we're going to harden those systems, we're going to learn a lot as we go, and what you see in 5 years will include some technologies where we've learned how to do things a little bit differently than we do today.
So I feel it's a mix. There's technologies back from Apollo that they mastered that they've forgotten since, and some of that stuff we're actually recreating. Part of it's recreating because they haven't used it because they haven't gone to the moon lately, and the tech we're looking at is very lunar specific. Part of that it's been lost because a jump to newer versions of the technology that were supposed to pan out that haven't really panned out yet. I think green propellant's a good example of that, where it's green propellant starting to work, but it's not a full replacement for some of the biprop systems that we need to go back to the moon. So I think propulsion is, we've all struggled a little bit with that, some more than others, in terms of finding a propulsion technology that's properly scaled within the timeline. Like Tim said, that some of it might be there, but it's timelines that aren't compatible with our missions. And then other is cost. Again, it might be there, but it's just not compatible cost-wise. You can see what these awards are. When you look at, about half of the award goes to launch, so that doesn't leave a whole lot left for the lander, which really drives. I kind of have a general metric that there's no one component on the lander that should be over about $1 million, because that adds up very quick, and then you run out of money. So we can't buy $5-10 million, engine systems, for example. They're not compatible. So even though the tech might be there, the affordability and the availability of that tech is an area we're struggling with. And in some cases, that tech just isn't there. And then one other note, I think there's a lot of terrestrial and CubeSat technology that has developed over the last 10 years, whether it's LiDAR in the automotive sector or CubeSat, small electronics. That stuff is very beneficial to us, and we're able to pick up some of that technology and ruggedize it for space or scale it up a little bit and apply it.
Yeah, I'll maybe to echo the points that Rob made about how hard it is. I think it's going to be. I think we will be successful as a nation with multiple commercial companies successfully landing, because we do have the tech. I think the basic tech to land a robotic lander on the surface of the moon and have it survive for 14 Earth days is there. But it's probably really going to be the challenge is making sure that we steel ourselves as a nation to stomach when we do have a bad day. The Commercial Resupply Services program had a couple of those in dramatic fashion, and yet they stayed the course and they kept pushing and kept flying, and now it just happens all the time on a regular basis. And I think the same will happen for the moon, in that we may have some challenges along the way, and we need to stay the course and make sure that we're still progressing. Once we have those regular deliveries, when I think of tech, I think about the lunar night survival element of what we're doing. That's going to be the next big thing. China's been operating for many lunar days and nights on the far side of the moon. We need to be matching that as a nation. And I think the companies up here are fully capable of doing that, but we need to be looking at, on the CLPS budget out years in particular, in the latest budget request, it was relatively flat. We're going to probably need a little bit of a plus up, because you're going to have lander missions hopefully operating for months, if not maybe even years at a time. And we need to be able to make sure that we match the budget with the effort that it's going to take to develop that tech ultimately.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Regina's question on sustainability. People always wonder why we do not have a moon base today. Why are we not on our way to Mars? I'm a child of Apollo. I wanted to be involved in the moon program since the 5th grade and missed it in the shuttle program, but I'm doing it now. But it didn't happen. And we're still not on the moon. Other than the Chinese, we've not been on the surface of the moon since 1976. And in part, it deals with the sustainability issue. And if some of you read, there was a press article just this morning where an independent, maybe an IG report on NASA talked about sustainability as it relates to Artemis. And one of the sentences in there said, as sustainability has yet to explicitly been defined in context. So we don't really have an agreement on what that word means, of what sustainability means. I think in part of that has to do with the Earth's gravity well. If you're going to take everything to the moon or Mars from the Earth, it's just prohibitive. It just doesn't work. It's not sustainable. When I was executive director in Hawaii of the Planetary Robotic Test Site, I met with a number of Hawaiians to understand how Hawaii did it. How did the state of Hawaii become sustainable when the Polynesians landed there? And when the Polynesians and those canoes came over, they didn't bring years of supplies with them to the islands. They brought enough supplies just for the trip. And then once they got to the islands, they lived off the land. They used the water. They used the basalt regolith for sidewalks, for tools, for foundations, for structure. They lived off the land. And that's the paradigm. And of course, we know that as in situ resource utilization. But that's totally different than the way we operate Space Station today. Space Station operates off of an Earth-reliant model, meaning that Space Station is totally reliant on Earth for supply, for water, for fuel, for clothes, for everything is totally reliant on Earth for operations and survival. We cannot operate that way on Moon and Mars. We're not going to load up a ship and take a huge load from Home Depot to the Moon. That's just not the way it's going to operate. That's not sustainable, and it's prohibitive. So it's an Earth-independent model, which is totally different than the space station model. We have to be independent of the Earth. And the two main pieces of that in ISRU deal with the volatiles in the water. That seems to be what everybody talks about. But there's another critical component of that, and that's in the construction technologies, the civil engineerings, living off the land and using the regolith and the basalt there to do all the things we need to do. Once we're able to do that, and those technologies don't exist, we don't know how to drill on the moon. We don't know how to core. We've never made the first brick on the moon. Those technologies don't exist. And I think NASA's job is not to mine the moon. NASA's job is to show that the Earth can be mined, and then to translate that into the commercial sector. And I think, in my perspective, over the last 10 to 15 years, NASA has not done a good job of developing those sustainable technologies, in part within ISRU, that allow those technologies to be de-risked to then to be picked up by the public and the commercial sector. So thanks for letting me share on the sustainability.
Thank you. So you all see that the Bob, I keep calling you Bob, it's Rob, has been an avid proponent for space flight, and he absolutely loves the subject, and we appreciate that discourse. I'm going to pull us back to why we're talking today, and that's about how do we get there? We know ISS is a terrestrial-based program platform. I think we got that, and so I'm gonna yield to Tim. I know he wants to jump in, and so I'm gonna let him jump in. And after that, I want the panel to start thinking about what I wanted to segue into was to start talking about the fact that CLPS currently is designed to deliver relatively small-sized payloads. That is by design, right? Because we are the overarching 1,000-foot motherhood statement for CLPS is that we are trying to enable a lunar economy, and to do that, to get the small businesses viable, it can't be, you know, very, very large missions that become cost prohibitive. So by design, CLPS delivers relatively small-sized payloads. So I want each of you, after Tim has his comment, to think about, is there any tech needed for growing and sizing of payloads, or is it mostly a timing issue? We heard you guys talk about, you know, sometimes it's a timing thing. When we need it, it's not available, or vice versa. So think about those things, and I'll yield to Tim.
Thanks, Regina. You know, sustainability is man, that's a loaded term. It can mean a lot of different things. I think the commercial sustainability is very important as well. And one of the things we really like about CLPS is, we didn't say it outright, but all of the missions that we have on contract right now are actually not CLPS missions. There are Intuitive Machines missions and Firefly missions and Astrobotic missions, where as part of that mission, we're providing a service to NASA under the CLPS program, which then gives us the ability to go out and begin to grow a market. And I will tell you, and Dan, would be interested to hear your comments. When we won the first task order and we went out and asked people, hey, we're going to the moon, we have extra capacity, who wants to send something to the moon? It was crickets. Nobody was thinking about what they might do outside of a NASA program to go to the moon, because you couldn't go to the moon, right? The only way you could do it was if it came through the decadal survey and you were the top PI, and that was the only way to do it. I will tell you that since then, we get a lot of feedback from people who say, you know, since the CLPS program started, we've begun thinking about what regular access to the moon might look like, and we've got some ideas, we've got some payloads. We want to fly something to lunar orbit. We want to fly something to the surface. We've had inquiries for everything from a metric ton of delivery outside of NASA all the way down to 60 grams. You know, so everything in between, and that sustainability is real too. If you're the only customer paying for all the services, you're not going to get a good deal. If you're the only customer paying for all the services and you have a hiccup where you can't continue to buy services, those services go away, therefore not sustainable. So I think the commercial side of this, and you've watched NASA's progression from commercial cargo services to commercial crew, now CLPS, there's now this Near Space Network Services call out, show an engagement from the agency to say, okay, let's foster these economies and multiple players so we can reduce cost. I think that's essential for sustainability at the moon. In terms of scaling, we have plans for a 1 to 2 metric ton lander and for an up to 10 metric ton lander that we basically have all the technology for. But our early stage developments will prove most of those systems out, and then we're refactoring. And I think you'll see a lot. None of us can afford to do blank sheet redesigns every time we come up with a new lander. So we're going to leverage these early missions with the small risk, smaller payloads. And I think our success early is the big thing that's going to let us move to larger payloads.
So to add to the sustainability thing, I do think a lot of the payloads that we are flying are doing, I think, what we need to understand, you know, what we can and can't do. I mean, we're drilling, we're analyzing the regolith, we're better understanding what's there so that we can be sustainable. So I think we're going in that direction, and we're doing as much as we can with these lower cost landers that have limited capacity. So as we scale up, I think the scaling up is really driven by what other science can we do that requires bigger rovers, bigger sensors, bigger drills, whatever. And so we'll continue to support that. But also as we scale up, in the early days, we are going to have to supply a lot of the early resources so that people can survive there long enough where we can turn around the resources. they're just not as obvious as they are when you're on an island in the Pacific, right? So it's a lot harder to figure out what are we going to do with what the limited stuff we have. So I think there is a good path to get there. I do agree. I think a lot of us grew up thinking we'd be living there by now and it would be commonplace. But hopefully we're on that trajectory now.
Yeah, I'll echo Tim's thoughts about scaling. Like, once you've done it at a smaller scale, a larger scale is actually not that big of a leap technologically. You've already demonstrated the subsystems, the capabilities. So I think actually there's an opportunity as Artemis thinks about resupply services. You'll have a variety of companies that have successfully landed on the moon, demonstrated the ability to do it, and don't necessarily go all the way up to an HLS scale for cargo resupply, which is a huge opportunity then, because you don't have necessarily the cost of an HLS to deliver key cargo to the surface on a regular basis, which we know we're going to need if we're having astronaut crews stay there for longer durations. And so, I think there's a great opportunity to utilize CLPS as the primary mechanism for the rest of the government to be able to have the larger scale landers, because it's not a great leap to go to that larger scale, which I think does speak to sustainability then as well, because we have lower cost landers that can deliver large amounts of payload on a regular basis. That to me is like fundamentally how you change the economics then over time to make it at least economically sustainable.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to echo what they've talked about on scalability. Some of you will remember years ago, I think Tim will remember, the agency pushed spiral development at a NASA headquarters. I'm a big fan of that. We use that in X-38, build a little, test a little. So I'm very much in tune with, in terms of doing scalability, to take lower or more risk systems and test them in space and put it back in the design cycle. That's where I think we failed to do as an agency in the past. When I look at the Gemini program in the middle 60s, we specifically did that program to develop the tools and the techniques to get to the moon. Precision attitude maneuvers in a spacecraft, fuel cell development that we had never flown in space, long duration space flights, spacewalks, proximity operations, rendezvous, docking. All those tools were in a risk reduction and development program for Apollo. What I don't see today is the Gemini equivalent in where we are with Artemis. To make it sustainable and scalable, where is the technology and specifically the flight test program of ISRU and other technologies? I don't see the Gemini program in where we are today. I think the role of the government is to do those type of programs. Glenn did it with the ACT satellite. And we have a history of doing that to reduce the risk and develop the technology so they can be scalable, so then commercial and the public sector can then pick those up and be able to run with them. So thanks for letting me respond on that.
All right, thank you. So I had a question that I think that has been subsumed in the answers, and I do want to give the audience time to ask questions. I want to... Rob has already shared with us the myriad of challenges from his perspective that he believes that exploring the lunar surface presents. I want to give Tim and Shea and Dan the opportunity to do so, and I just want to give you the opportunity to give me a 2-sentence response to what keeps you up at night. We've heard a lot about challenges throughout the few days we've been here. We've heard prop challenges, we've heard comm challenges, we've heard storage challenges, battery challenges. I mean, you name them, we've heard them. So I would like to put a little bit of spin on it because you all are bending hardware. You two of the vendors sitting here with me today have missions on the books to go at the end of the year, beginning of next year. So give me a 2 to 3 sentence reply on what keeps you up at night.
It's the unknown unknowns. So we are all hardware rich up here by design, and we test in the hardware, but there are permutations of hardware and operations in the space environment that may catch us in a configuration and a permutation of settings that, despite our best testing at this small scale, those unknown unknowns, those are things. What did we not think of? What did we not leverage from all the previous experience that we stand on the shoulders of giants, really? So there's a lot of stuff we know. Hey, don't do this, and you'll avoid a problem. But we're integrating systems for the first time, and we're flying them. That integration exposed to space in the actual operational environment, you just can't test it fully on the ground. So we're going to see it for the first time.
Thank you.
So I would say people, first of all, I sleep pretty good. And when I wake up in the morning, it's usually people. It's really hard right now. We have Blue Origin's taking people just left and right. Salaries we can't afford to match. It's really hard to keep people. You have to keep them because of the work, not because of the pay. And the second thing is just NASA's resilience in this program. Are they going to stick with it if the first few missions have problems, or if the first few? There's news last week about one of the vendors dropping out of the pool, for example. Do we have the resilience to stick with this? Because I think we've said it already, but we're all confident if we stick with it, this is going to be easy in 3 to 5 years from now. But until we get to that point, it's not going to be easy, and we need NASA to stick with it and to be our effectively our anchor customer.
Not to be a broken record, but I'll say resilience as well. I think it's easy for us as a space community to communicate to one another that failures do happen, and we can all get through them, we can learn from them. But then there's a whole constituency beyond us in Congress and in the public and in other industries, and helping them to understand kind of how this industry should mature is, I think, really important as we all go through the challenges of, as Tim was saying, doing it for the first time. And recognizing that a failure is not the end of the road. We're going to learn from it, we're going to get better, and we're ultimately going to succeed. But sometimes if you're not in the space community, you won't necessarily have that attitude or that perspective. So I think having all of our colleagues in the community really helping people understand the nature of this program, I think, is really important.
Okay, I'll be quick.
I gave him a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two things keep me up. One, in my 25 missions as a flight director, I can tell you Murphy lives in space. It does. I've really been surprised. And so when it hits, it's not to be surprised, but being able to be prepared for Murphy. The other one that keeps me up is flight software. If you read the press, even recently, with the little satellite going to the moon, it was a flight software issue. Boeing CS-100, flight software issue. Flight software, we have over time moved from 1,200 knobs and switches in the shuttle spacecraft, where we're putting all command and control into software. It's great because software doesn't weigh anything. But software and software assurance to me is a significant risk and always will. And I think that's really what worries me is flight software.
Absolutely, and I echo that, and I didn't even ask myself that question. We could talk about this all day. This is extremely exciting. I am going to open up the floor for questions from the audience of this panel or of me at this time.
We have online attendees,
Okay.
So I've got a couple of questions, and they both happen to be from our media representatives, so be prepared. Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now has a two-part question. Are Astrobotic and Intuitive Machines still targeting launches for their first CLIPS missions before the end of the year? And then the second part is for you, Tim, or Timothy. Can you talk more about the CON data relay satellites? How big are they? How many will be launched? And is IM building them in-house or working with suppliers and partners? So, targeting launches?
Dan, why don't you go first, and then since I got a twofer, I'll finish up.
Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes. We are targeting for the end of the year.
We are most likely going to go in January. So we're looking at January now.
Got it.
Yeah.
I knew that.
No, my customer's not hearing this for the first time. So no, we're most likely looking at January. The CON satellites, I can talk. We have CON 1 and CON 2 already on contract. CON 1 is, we have a CDR in a couple weeks. Basically, CON 1, we take a York Systems Tranche 0 satellite, and we marry a version of our lander communication systems on it, where we've added some things so we can do reverse banding, we can do PNT, We've added a higher gain antenna. But it's very much a first toe in the water based on the communication system we already have. So it will be there. It will provide connectivity. It will provide store and forward, bent pipe, some PNT. But it's not really, the end service item. But our corporate culture is much one of get something in place and test it, and then build better after that. And so Con 2 moves to a larger satellite, also a York satellite, which is a LX class, their Tranche 1 satellite. And on that one, we're actually specifically designing the communication system for higher performance, higher throughput. We're going to go multi-band. So, and then we will augment the system with a new Con satellite every year as part of our annual cadence of missions. And then we have a programmed replacement in, where when Con 1 finally, ends its service life, we'll then come up with Con 6. And so in that way, for a smaller incremental cost, the latest satellite we put up, replacing the one that is moving into obsolescence and disposal, really, will have the latest technology you need: multi-channel, optical communications, interlink, support of multiple users on the surface. But that will grow with the system, as opposed to what being a complete system with all the capability in the end state. We're going to move towards that.
Gotcha. And then second question from our media friends, Jeff Faust from Space News, for Rob. Can you provide more details about the technical performance of OrbitBeyond's lander and when it might be available for CLPS missions? And how does it compare to what you offered for the CLPS task order you briefly had in 2019?
Yeah, hi, Jeff. Our spacecraft is ready to move into a critical design review post-award. As I said, all the design now closes to my satisfaction. That was a hard road to get there. We have about 700 kilograms of performance or more out of TLI injection for soft landing on the moon. And we and all our partners are ready to move into that development cycle at award.
Hello, thank you. My name is Paul Schweibens. I'm currently a fourth-year aerospace engineering student at Ohio State, but I'm also working for Cool Basine at ComSat. Right now I'm working on sort of like a lunar lander for a communications tower, and through the little amounts of research I've done so far, I was wondering if you guys could say anything specifically about advances from other like Apollo missions or realizations you guys have made from testing and research for other compactable landers and landing gears that have been used in the past.
In a lot of places, we've found the Apollo approach to be very sound, and what we've done is we've upgraded it with modern materials. So our landing gear looked very much like the Apollo landing gear, but it's a carbon composite instead of aluminum. And so there's a rethinking there. It is absolutely worth looking at how Apollo and Surveyor and Luna did what they did, and going, how might you reimagine that in a way that either meets one of the many pressures we have for supply chain, materials availability, all those things. But that's still rich to mine, and I'd advise you to look in that area as well.
Yeah, we completed landing testing into last year, and we actually you can go order lunar regolith simulant, and you got to be very careful with it, breathing apparatus and all that fun stuff. But the tech they brought back, the understanding of the regolith and your ability to test with it. But we did the exact same thing. We looked at lots of photos, even went to some museums looking at the various landing gear, and then optimized it for what was best for us, and then we just tested the heck out of it and until you get comfortable.
Yeah, crushable honeycomb works. Proved it worked, and won't change it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tenzin from the Moon Ranger program, which Dan actually talked about briefly. I guess I've got a two-part question. We've talked a lot about propulsion and electrical systems at this symposium, and then this panel's talked very briefly about questions about software assurance and keeping things in cost down. So I'm interested if you could share your approach in sort of the software assurance side while it's still remaining in a reasonable cost, but also talking about the compute, because I'm imagining that there's a lot more compute power that's required for some of these things that we're talking about. Where are you finding, what technologies are on the horizon for compute that is both ready for space and in the cost that you're looking for?
Your first question was, I logged in on the second question. Your first question?
First question was how you're approaching software assurance in the same
software assurance, thank you.
process.
Actually, my response in brief, so these guys have time to talk too, is we have a realization that complexity is not our friend. And we really, really look closely at our software and go, let's not make it do more than it should do. There's a finite amount of time and resources that we have to develop and test our systems. And coming from a human spaceflight background, our general thought is, I got to handle the first failure and the second failure and the third failure. That detracts energy from making sure that the primary system actually worked. And so we have to be very disciplined about the simplicity of our design. And even if I had more compute capability at times, it would not help me to take advantage of it. So we have to be careful there. We also use a lot of commercial software techniques for deploying software across our entire enterprise of testing and analysis and flight systems to get the most miles out of every cycle.
Yeah, so for the first one, for us, it's all about testing and hiring people who've done this before. So we built a team of experts that have landed on other bodies on Mars, for example, and then build test beds right away. By our PDR, we already had test beds operational where we were able to start testing our software. So test what you fly, test like you fly is what we live and die by. And so that's really, to me, the answer there. And then, of course, all the fundamentals that we've learned in the industry in terms of configuration control of that software, how you test it before you upload it. And then finally, we're taking those test platforms to low Earth orbit. So again, you get them off the ground, off the test bed into a basic spacecraft, so you start operating them in space. It's a lot of risk reduction buy down before you finally use it on the end mission. In terms of computing power, a lot of what Tim said, I would say that there's a lot of availability for higher capable systems, but those aren't necessarily as rad tolerant. So you really have to balance, what do you really need versus what's easy? And so you just do that assessment.
I agree with everything that's been said on software. I don't think I could add anything to that. But I would say onboard compute is incredibly important, and it's something that we're excited to be testing with our terrain relative navigation sensor on our first mission, which will not be, it'd be more of a technology demonstration payload, which gives us an opportunity to test it out and actually put it through its paces at the moon and then start relying on it. So one of the, I think, really great things about the CLIPS program is that you can actually do technology demonstration in the environment at a way lower cost than it's ever been done before. And that's a huge, huge opportunity for advancing tech and doing it quickly and then learning from it for the next mission just a few years later.
It's the same as on our side. We rely on, within software development, to do in our FlatSat, like many of them, integrated and complex hardware-software integration testing. But we make sure that we have software quality assurance embedded into that early. SQA did not exist before 2000, and if you look at the Osprey accidents in that time frame, the faster, better, cheaper under Golden, all that was based upon the fact that there was no SQA back in those early days. So software quality assurance is critical to us in that. Now, on the computers, we've spent a lot of time looking at performance as against function. So we're using an onboard computer to do all our housekeeping and comm and that type thing. We use a separate lander guidance computer that is much more has much more processing capability for the precision guidance and optical navigation.
Yeah, there's one thing I just got to interject though that's interesting about this program. We fly different payloads from different providers every time. And so there's our testing of our flight vehicles and landing an empty bus on the moon. But then here's 5 payloads, all developed independently, that we have to run through and integrate, make sure the software works correctly there. There's no harm back. We take care of them. So we've done 2.5 rounds of FlatSat testing with our IM-1 payloads. We're almost through the first round of FlatSat testing. And that is a brave new world because it's not this PI on top everything's hermetically sealed. You've got new players, and a lot of what we do on our subsequent missions is making sure we can assure the CLIPS program that we'll do no harm between these disparate payloads, and software is a big part of that.
I might add, we're looking for our science objectives to be met. I'm just saying. Right?
It's going to be a short question. So I'm Jessie Falcone, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow at CMU. So my question is about the relay communication system. Do you expect that will be helpful also for Mars exploration, maybe too easygoing the ESN at current state? And a question for Astrobotics: why? This is a curiosity. Why you guys have not considered a relay communication system?
So the first question was, do we see the things we're developing now extending to Mars?
Yeah, or in general, like use the relay communication on the moon.
I think that's where this new near space networking system, which is limited to within 2 million kilometers of Earth, so not yet Mars range, will be a first step. And if that program's successful, I think you will see this growth towards, okay, let's engage with the industry and figure out other ways to get to Mars distances. But I suspect this 2 million kilometer thing will be the first step, and that success will lead on to more capability.
Thank you.
On the telecommunications question, we've decided to work with some partners on that. We just haven't in-housed it. It's a decision of, we want to focus on certain things and, draw and control volume appropriately. But it's absolutely something we're working on. It's just working with partners.
Thank you.
That concludes our panel discussion on behalf of NASA headquarters and JSC, and our Center Director does send her support and her willingness to have us and the resources at JSC be a part of this organization. So thank you to the vendors, companies who are making CLIPS happen. This is super exciting, and these gentlemen really represent, the millennials have a saying, don't talk about it, be about it. And these guys are really being about it, and we invite you all to support your constituency to get funding, so we can have that resilience, because resilience really reduces to having the proper funding to keep going. And just so you know, yes, we do have a risk tolerance for failure. That is what CLIPS is about, and so we're not afraid of failure. That is built into the design of CLIPS. And so with that, I thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you all. Excellent.